Please welcome back to the stage today's MC, Mr. Lance Newbold.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you, Lockheed Martin, DMG Maury, and Northern Wings for sponsoring our comfort stations and providing all of the toiletries to help everyone look and feel their best this week. Please welcome premier sponsor Turbo Sjogren, Vice President and General Manager for Government Services with Boeing Global Services.
Good morning. Attila, the lights are bright up here, I agree. I'm Turbo. I run Boeing's Government Services, and I'm honored to be here today. I'd like to thank the Midwest Chamber of Commerce and Tinker Air Force Base for bringing us all together today. I'd also like to thank General Hawkins, General Miller, and General Morris. It's an honor being here with you all today. Governor Stitt's comments earlier today, we had an opportunity to engage with him directly, and what Oklahoma and the legislature is doing to support the aerospace industry in Oklahoma is critical, and we're glad and proud to be part of that. The Women in Aeronautics reception last night, I was very proud. We had a number of our senior women leaders who were part of that. For the Boeing company, for Oklahoma, for our nation, it's important. To the active and retired members of the military in attendance today, thank you for your service. Boeing has a long, rich history with Tinker. The partnership dates back to 1943, when the base was still Tinker Airfield, and the Tinker Depot was the site of a Douglas factory that produced roughly 50% of the CH-47 Skytrains used in World War II. The CH-47 was a troop carrier, a cargo transport aircraft, and we produced over 5,300 of them here, and half the workforce at that time were women. That's where Rosie the Riveter was partly coined. In 1946, Tinker and Boeing expanded that partnership where we did the significant mods on the B-29s, including the Enola Gay. Our partnership between Boeing and Tinker remains strong today. What we're doing with the B-52, what we're doing with the C-17, and what we're already doing on the KC-46, the AWACS, and the E-7 to come. As you all know, the Department of Defense has called on industry to be proactive in delivering on readiness to the warfighter. Air Force Chief of Staff, and likely our next Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General C.Q. Brown, issued a report, and I will state very succinctly, if we fail to adapt to the changes in the strategic environment, a large and growing body of evidence suggests that we risk losing in great power competition. General Miller talked about competition. General Brown talked about competition. If we don't change, we lose. And it has to be a holistic change. It's not of one-off processes, it's not one company, it's Northrop, it's Boeing, it's Lockheed, it's all of our customers. It's the Navy, it's the United States Air Force, it's the Royal Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force. We all have to change. Those global partnerships are and will be critical to our success. You have no doubt recently heard about the air mobility efforts with regards to Mobility Guardian 23, where the United States, along with our international partners, simulated operations needed to support a response to a growing threat in the Pacific. It was a no-nonsense look at where we stand today from an operating perspective, both our strengths and our weaknesses in a contested environment. The reason that the exercise was a success is it brought to light both that which we're doing well together, that which we're not. One such area which has already come to the light of day was how we're working together in the area of data analytics, and specifically with regards to aircraft health forecasting. Between Boeing, Tinker, and AMC, we picked the best C-17s to go downrange by tail number. And we made sure that we had all of the plans in place to keep that mission readiness up. What the United States delivered out of Townsville in the north of Australia and from the west coast was not lost on our adversary. Our other capabilities that we've invested, including where we have found unhealthy systems and we have issues with the aircraft, we have forward deployed our people. We've forward deployed our field service reps, and we're also using new technology specifically with regards to Adam, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We've had already frank engagements with AMC, and I'm proud to say that between AMC and ourselves, we're going to get together at the end of this month and have a no-nonsense look at what worked, what didn't work, what drove readiness, what didn't, what are the investments we're going to continue to make, and what we're not. It became clear to us that over the course of the exercise, we need to get better in supporting our aircraft and our airmen in the anti-access area denial environment. The key here is to being proactive and engaging with the services and our allies where we can identify those gaps and make the right investments now. When we go, we have to go with what we've got. We have to drive the readiness up. Let me be clear. We're attacking this challenge from a position of strength. Just as this country adapted factories and workforces to meet the needs of World War II, which we did here in Oklahoma, where the people of Tinker were key to the production and sustainment of our war efforts, let there be no doubt. Tinker Air Force Base and the people of this community remain a key part of the deterrence going forward. We at the Boeing Company are continuing to make investments to ensure that whether we're in a time of deterrence or a more active footing, that the resiliency of our supply chain, which we talk a lot about, remains mission ready. But we talk a lot about resilience. The keys to resilience are a relationship, which has to be a partnership. I have to take risk. You have to take risk. You have to trust me. I have to trust you. The experience of going through an exercise like Mobility Guardian 23 highlights gaps, as I mentioned earlier, and it also rekindles relationships from the top down and back up again. Relationships are going to be essential for our success. I mentioned Adam. Boeing has invested in technology to create those moments of success, and our augmented training operations maintenance, Adam, is such an example. This technology allows our maintainers anywhere in the globe to have live interaction with OEM experts to perform maintenance actions of every level of complexity. In a dispersed environment where our men and women are having to take care of the readiness of those aircraft, they can engage live and we can look together and resolve problems together. That technology is that we already have it and we're leveraging it. Where the maintainers need real time to support to get an AOG operational or are performing standard depot level repairs and need a part to be on the shelf, we're also making investments across that service spectrum, investing in forward deploying of parts we will know will be needed to keep those aircraft mission ready. An example of this is what we're doing with our expanded partnership with Tinker to manufacture, repair, print, and overhaul spare parts. Tinker Air Force Base is again a key piece to ensure the mission readiness of our warfighter. What happens at Tinker is a key success to our readiness around the globe. Partnering on our work here will allow, with allied nations as well, will allow us to pre-position those supplies and use their facilities to perform maintenance, repair, and overhaul, and will produce an effective and efficient result for our warfighters. What we did in the north of Australia drove readiness. Our allies have capabilities. We have capabilities. Those capabilities, when leveraged together, can drive readiness. Having allied nations like Japan with the KC-46 or Australia with the C-17 and the MQ-28, having supply chain and repair capabilities across the globe, those all contribute to that partnership we're building by reducing the requirements to move aircraft in and out of a contested region we increase the surety of success. The Department of Defense has placed a heavy load on Air Force tankers in order to move tactical fighters, cargo, and personnel into an area of operations. Boeing has placed a key focus on sustainment of the KC-46. Tankers are and have been the backbone for the Department of Defense, and increasing the attention and awareness on the supply chain support and DLA on-time deliveries are key in ensuring that the 76th Air Maintenance Group at Tinker is capable of producing those A, B, C, and D checks the ABC checks on the inspection aircraft. As Tinker expands the tanker campus with additional hangars to bring in more KC-46s, Boeing has a commitment and an obligation to focus on that supply chain and increase the readiness with the investments we've made. Our relationship with Mr. Gray and the 448th Supply Wing is focused on increasing on-time delivery to DLA, to both the depots and the main operating bases. We've had an opportunity to engage on a number of the investments we're making there with people internally and how we're going to ensure that we do what is required. Boeing is also pleased with our partnership with Tinker, based in the area of autonomous aircraft inspection, the virtual reality training, and additive manufacturing. General Hawkins, we're partnering, and Colonel Moore, we are partnering with the Sustainment Center and the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex to bring autonomous aircraft inspections and virtual reality training into the depots. Building on the success with the 15th Maintenance Group at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, using autonomous aircraft inspections on C-17s has enabled better inspection processes and will ensure accelerated repairs. This will allow the PACOM commander the ability to turn those C-17s back into the Pacific theater, moving equipment, supplies, manpower, and material into contested regions in preparations for a potential conflict. By using these autonomous aircraft inspections in the depots on KC-46s, B-52s, KC-135s, Colonel Lockhart can free up the ground mechanics, allowing them to focus on more intense inspections or even on starting repairs, focusing on reducing the time in depots and returning a high-quality aircraft back to the warfighter in a more agile manner to ensure readiness. Autonomous aircraft inspection will focus on building digital inspection history, enabling engineering and touch mechanics to focus on recovering and repairing those aircraft, ultimately returning the aircraft back to the warfighter sooner at a reduced cost, again increasing mission readiness. Finally, AAI will allow a technician to reach back to both Boeing engineering as well as to the program offices to evaluate aircraft status, make real-time decisions, and return the aircraft to flight, reducing downtime. We're partnering with a number of small businesses. Earth Autonomy and Red 6 have partnered with us and are here with us this week in our booth. Boeing continues to expand our partnering with the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex. We are shoulder to shoulder with Colonel Quigley from the Commodities Maintenance Group on additive manufacturing. Our partnerships include working with the CMXG to produce constrained parts as well as expanded production capability. This is not just talk, we're doing it right now. The team is currently working on a set of E3 air ducts that will be flown on an allied partner aircraft, which will be a pathfinder to work with USAF on having that E3 tech data updated to use additional additive manufacturing as a suitable substitute for obsolete parts. Our focus in Boeing Government Services remains on readiness, mission readiness, and how we can overcome some of the obstacles with legacy parts, as well as building a more reliable network of sustainment and predictability focused on mission readiness. We're partnering with the ACC and the 552nd Air Control Wing with the retiring of the 13 E3 AWACS aircraft and establishing the E7 as the early warning and control aircraft. The 552nd Maintenance Group has already initiated that transition by removing parts from retiring AWACS to sustain their robust fleet, and maintaining a state of readiness through the transition to the E7 is paramount, as the Air Force is expecting that aircraft in 2027. Until then, Boeing will continue to support the E3, as well as support sustainment of the E7 as it comes online. The Air Force transition from the H model to the J model on the B-52, and the work that our San Antonio performing for the first ramp and the engine conversion is critical. And we're going to be looking to work with Tinker to make sure that that partnership transitions well from San Antonio to Tinker. We have engineers already shipside here at Tinker to assist the mechanics through the spin-up of the learning, how to perform those upgrades, and to do those new inspection processes. Boeing will be partnering with the Air Force during the entire process to ensure they deliver a high effective weapon back to the Global Strike Command. In closing, I've mentioned a lot, and I've got quite tactical on a number of efforts we're doing, and I've talked about a lot of the individuals in our customer community to whom we're accountable. I want you to know that Boeing Government Services is focused on mission readiness, and that mission readiness does not occur without the partnership with Tinker and the partnership without the Air Force. We're in this fight together, and you have my personal commitment and the commitment of the Boeing Company and all of the men and women of the Boeing Company in Oklahoma in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sjogren. Our next speaker is the commander of the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center. The center is responsible for total life cycle management for aircraft, engines, munitions, electronic, computer, network, cyber, and agile combat support systems, employing more than 28,000 people and with an approximate budget of $304 million. We are pleased to welcome Lieutenant General Shaun Morris.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if I should feel bad that the room got half as big before my presentation or not. I've also never been closed captioned before. It also feels a little bit less organic when you're being told to applaud for me right on the screen. So again, but I'll just take it for what it is. I'm sure you're all happy to see me. And you're much closer, and you're all much closer. So thanks for having me out. General Hawkins, thank you very much for the invitation. It's always great to be here at Tinker and the Primes. I do want to acknowledge just quickly. So last week at Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, we did our version of this called Lifecycle Industry Days, and we actually partner with Air Force Research Lab, and they do what they call Right Dialogue with Industry during the same week. And it struck me when I was doing those two events, and then here at Tinker and the Primes, that all three names have industry in them. Right, you disguise yours a little bit better than we do, right? But I think we fail perhaps in just focusing on industry, though that's an important element of what we do here, to really acknowledge our community and the importance of community partnerships. And I was struck by that again this morning with the senator, with the governor, with all of our local elected leaders who are here, that we cannot achieve any of what we achieve at any of our installations without our local, state, and federal government support. And so thank you to all of our elected leaders for what you all do for us at all of our locations. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center priorities and our partnerships with the Sustainment Center and our ability to accomplish everything that we accomplish inside of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. And so I have no slides, but General Miller helped me out because he showed a few slides that I might have used earlier. So, you'll have to flash back, right? You'll have to flash back a little bit. And so if you go back 3 years, right? 3 years ago, the chief came into office. And the chief released his Accelerate, Change, or Lose treatise, which General Miller talked about with his 4 lines of effort. And, right, Accelerate, Change, or Lose isn't acceleration for the sake of acceleration. It's accelerating toward this concept of being prepared for near-peer competition, right? And so that's a really important framework that you have to understand within what that structure looks like. And then a year later, we had the new secretary came in, Secretary Kendall, and he released his operational imperatives, which again, General Miller kind of outlined the initial 7 operational imperatives. Since then, we've added 3 cross-cutting enabling teams, right? So we found as we examined these operational imperatives, there were things that all of them cut across: mobility, weapons, and electromagnetic spectrum operations, and so those were added, not as operational imperatives, but as cross-cutters. And we're getting ready to add a fourth one here on training and test coming up this next year. And so inside of that framework, right, of preparing for near-peer competition, for getting ready for these shifts, and all of those are generating additional work for Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, right, which will eventually translate to work for the Air Force Sustainment Center and the Air Force Test Center. We looked really hard internally to see what are the things that we need to do, that we need to change inside of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center to be prepared to be able to execute not only the work that we already had, but in particular to make sure that the work being generated out of these operational imperatives could be successful. Because again, if you take them at face value as imperatives, right, that means those things have to be successful if we, as an Air Force, are going to be successful in being able to be competitive against a near-peer competitor, in this case, China. Okay, and so we take that very seriously. And so we looked across Air Force Lifecycle Management Center at what we were doing well and what we needed to adjust and change. And we, in the end, we came down really to three things, three areas that we needed to adjust as a center to be prepared to be successful. And they kind of work together. I think of them generally as a triangle because each leg of that triangle has to work together. One is airmen, right, our people. Okay, and so we have an initiative that we refer to as WHO. The other is our physical infrastructure and IT networks, the ability to link those airmen together. Okay, and so we normally talk about that as WHERE. And then having, right, the digital trinity, this idea that we can take model-based systems engineering, digital engineering, modular open system architectures, and agile software development to be able to make our weapon systems incredibly more flexible in the ability to adjust more rapidly to a rapidly changing threat environment, right? And so we refer to that as how. And then when you combine those together, right, those create that triangle of, right, the workforce connected in the right ways with the right set of tools to be able to generate the war-winning capabilities that we need. Okay. So those are our three big initiatives that we've been focused on. So I'm going to touch on each of them because each of them have an incredible partnership here with the Sustainment Center as well. So I'll start with WHO, with our airmen. Okay. And so we've had a number of initiatives in this area, but our 100% focus this year has been on hiring. So last year, despite hiring very diligently, we actually lost, right, in terms of net people in the center, we actually went down because our attrition actually exceeded our ability to hire. And that's not a great place to be when you are looking at bringing on a lot of new work. So this year we set a goal, we refer to it as Mach 3, okay? Mach 3 in miles per hour is 2,301. We need to hire 2,301 external people this year, right, just to be able to address attrition, plus all the new work that we have coming into the center, okay? And so all of our activities have been focused on our ability to bring these people in. So now we're at this point, so we kick that off in around January. We're at about 1,500 right now against that 2,300 goal. So we're making great progress, more to go. It's a never-ending goal because attrition never ends, so hiring never ends. But the ability to bring on the workforce we need to work these programs is important. And it's part of a kind of a two-phase strategy that we have to think our way through. So when I talk with our team about the operational imperatives and the criticality of those programs, one of the things I say is the workforce that will make those things successful already exists inside of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. The reality is, right, it is difficult to go out and hire at the journeyman level folks who have the level of experience that you're going to be able to bring in and immediately put them onto these kind of programs. So that means we have to have a process by which we're going to take people internal to ourselves, realign them against these critical capabilities, and then accept risk by hiring behind them, perhaps with folks with less experience, but then be committed to develop those folks over time, right? And this is a challenge to us on how we think about this. And it is a challenge that has existed since the beginning of time, okay? And so I'll just General Miller started book club earlier with his reference, so my own version of book club. So I just recently read a book. It's called The Fort by Bernard Cornwell. If you don't read Bernard Cornwell, I highly recommend him. He's fantastic. And this book is about the Revolutionary War. And at the beginning of this book, you have a Commodore sitting on the bridge of a frigate, and he's in the Boston Harbor. And he's looking into the harbor, and he is lamenting the fact that inside the harbor are all these privateers, right, with the ships that they have captured, and running the various different flags associated with that. And he's not upset with the privateers because they're attacking British shipping. Obviously, that's good, right? We're all working together in that regard. He's not upset that they get to keep these ships, right, and they become part of their own private fleet versus part of the federal fleet. That's not what's bothering him either. What's bothering him is these privateers, because they're able to profit off of the war, can pay sailors more. And so he's having a very difficult time recruiting sailors for his Navy frigate because the privateers are paying more in Boston than he can. And so I only bring this up because it's important to recognize some of these problems have always existed, right? And so we have to think about, right, the fact, what are the strategies we're going to use to get around? Now, his strategy was press gangs. Okay, so I don't think that's a strategy still available to me anymore. If not, you're all signed up. So our strategy is hiring events. And so we have done a number of hiring events around the country. We've done 5 in-person hiring events. We've done virtual hiring events. They've been incredibly successful. 2 of those hiring events were in direct partnership with the Sustainment Center. So we did our initial hiring event in partnership with the Sustainment Center at Robbins. We had over 4,500 people show up to that hiring event, combined hiring event, and it enabled us to fill almost immediately about 70% of our vacancies that we had at Robbins. We just completed a hiring event here at Tinker, again, partnered with the Sustainment Center, and we filled about 65% of our vacancies here at Tinker using that. But maybe more importantly than that, right, that was kind of real time, is the collection of resumes that we have, that our team continues to work through, that I think will pay dividends for years, okay? And so those are individual events. They provide us a little bit of a spike, but at any time we're able to bring in new folks, there's a compounding effect, right? Because they're able to tell other people about this experience they had. They're able to talk about, right, what a great experience they're having, hopefully inside of organizations doing really critical, important work, right, and those things have a tendency to build on each other. So again, thanks to General Hawkins and his team for the great partnership in helping us to move that forward. Where? Okay, facilities is a huge challenge for us. So interestingly, as we look at new work coming in, all of that new work is highly classified. We're getting very, very little new work that's coming in that isn't. We have a few things. So if you look at like OI7, OI5, right, that talk about supporting deployed locations, there's some aspects of that where we're buying more of things we already have, like we need more support equipment. But the vast majority of this are new things, right, that require highly classified facilities. We just don't have a lot of classified space. So that requires us to think about the space we have in a different way, and to think about how do I free up space, right, to do perhaps less critical work to be able to then convert into classified spaces. And so we did, again, starting with Robbins, a huge collaboration with Robbins to look at rethinking about the entire infrastructure of the base and how we could better partner. And the result of that was we were able to take all of the LCMC footprint and reduce it by about 100,000 square feet. While at the same time, which we turned back to the base, at the same time we were able to bring our program offices, which had been spread all across locations on the base, and put them into a single contiguous space. So I think for the first time in known history, the C-130 program office actually all sits together at Robbins Air Force Base. And so this is some of what the current environment has enabled us to think about and do things differently. We're working through a similar partnership here now at Tinker to do the exact same thing that will allow us to consolidate our program offices into a single contiguous space Tinker didn't have quite the dispersion issue that Robbins did, but what we're looking for here, which we think is going to be really important, is we think it's going to be able to allow us to fix about a 6,700 square foot secure space issue that we have, where we're building a common secure workspace, right, with the complex. And again, so a huge win. And as we finish this, we're moving that discussion up to Hill. And for those of you who've been to all of those locations, you know every one of them looks completely different, right? So every location is its own individual unique challenge, but we're looking to partner with Hill and leverage off of their EUL activities that are going very successfully up there to see how we can get after the same problem at Hill Air Force Base. So again, tremendous partnership with the Sustainment Center on where. And then how. How is all about, General Richardson refers to it as digital material management, because it's more than just engineering. I think he's absolutely right about that. And so for us, it's really thinking about how do we reimagine how a program office does business in partnership with industry. How do we do all of the things that I just talked about to be able to build much more flexible weapon systems? You see the chief talking a lot about collaborative combat aircraft, next generation air dominance. You see it with our next generation ICBM, Sentinel. You see it in B-21 that's coming here, right? Those new weapon systems are really embracing this. Inside of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, we manage a program called Air Force Product Lifecycle Management, Air Force PLM, which is essentially our instantiation of Siemens Team Center, which has been designated as the Air Force PLM solution. And so we are partnering again with the Sustainment Center in how we instantiate that in order to be able to really drive readiness of our weapon systems. A-10 is perhaps one of our earliest adopters, and a great example, even on a weapon system that has perhaps been around a little while, even on a weapon system where we continue to talk about divestment, right? You can still generate huge gains by some of these digital conversions and these digital partnerships with the depot in thinking about how you manage that weapon system more effectively, right? So great examples in all of our key areas. I'm going to have to talk much slower because my time, General Miller told me this was here, but I started with 20 minutes and now I'm at 32. So, all right, settle in. Okay, you may get extra time for lunch. Okay. All right, so I got to stop looking at the clock now. It's going to go back to 5 here in a second. I feel like I ran on the treadmill last night. This feels like the treadmill. Like I ran on a treadmill once for 3 hours. It lasted, I'd been on there like 3 minutes. So anyway, so that's really our big initiatives inside of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, right, that we're really focused on, which is, again, who, how, and where, and how those things combine to really make us enabled to be able to be successful, and how we're partnering with the Air Force Sustainment Center. The other area that I'm responsible for, I generally refer to as my side hustle, is I'm also the Program Executive Officer for the Rapid Sustainment Office. Okay, and the Rapid Sustainment Office, right, was created by Secretary Wilson 5 years ago. It was modeled on the Rapid Capabilities Office, but the focus was solely on driving, right, innovative new technology into the sustainment space to drive down sustainment costs and improve availability and readiness. Okay, and so we actually all of the partners are here. So we have a board of directors for the Rapid Sustainment Office. The head of that is General Richardson and Secretary Hunter. And then it's advised by 3 individuals, which is myself, General Miller, and General Hawkins. Okay, and so we actually just recently had a board of directors. And so again, another partnership. We actually take our direction in the Rapid Sustainment Office from General Miller. The Air Force A4 is our requirements generator. They establish for us a series of ability to statements. We need the ability to do X, Y, and Z. And that sets then the priorities inside of the Rapid Sustainment Office. Inside of the Rapid Sustainment Office, we have essentially 2 program offices, so 2 areas that we have already scaled, and then an innovation hub that we use to generate new technologies and put them through kind of our pathways. The two program offices that we have, again, with great linkage, are Condition-Based Maintenance Plus. Okay, so Condition-Based Maintenance Plus has two essential elements to it that we work. One is reliability-centered maintenance, and the other is sensor-based algorithms. Okay, predominantly today, as we're implementing that, most of our implementation is in reliability-centered maintenance. Okay, this is where we take AI technology, we use it to help us generate alerts to the field when we see trends that would indicate a part is getting ready to fail, and then the field then can be able to take that part, right, and do maintenance on it or remove and replace it at a time of their choosing rather than generating an unscheduled removal. Okay. We struggle today tremendously inside of reliability-centered maintenance with being able to really target the parts that matter the most. So when I came into this job and I sat down with the team, we were, I would say, expanding condition-based maintenance laterally, right? And so we were implementing it on more and more platforms, a little bit on more and more platforms. And what I challenged the team was, hey, can we go vertically, right? Do we have the ability to go all in on a platform and really get after the parts that matter? And so we chose KC-135 as our first all-in platform. We went through a tremendous analysis, starting with the top 30 removal drivers, said, can we implement this on the top 30 removal drivers? I think in the end, we got a handful. And the reason we only got a handful is because there are some fundamental limitations in our system. Despite having great AI engines, so I continue to have lots of people who come in and talk to me about the AI engine. The AI engine is not the problem, right? I do not need better AI in this space. The problem falls into a couple categories. One, supply support. Okay, you cannot do predictive removals if you don't have parts on hand. It just doesn't work. Okay. The other is parts reliability. You cannot do predictive removals if your parts reliability is not standard enough that you can actually put it into a reasonable window. If you have a huge window of reliability, it drives you to having to remove those parts far too frequently, and you end up removing a lot of parts that you don't need to. So having, right, a very good parts reliability curve is critical to reliability-centered maintenance. What you see, interestingly, with companies that do this very, very successfully, like Delta, and they often get referenced here, is Delta doesn't only use this to identify parts, right, that they're going to remove predictively. They use it to identify parts that are not reliable, and then they put in place reliability improvement programs to actually get better parts, okay? And we struggle to be able to do that inside of our system, right? It falls into sustaining engineering, which is an area that we often under-resource, okay? So this is another challenge. And then the third challenge, right, is just how we sustain and support some of these parts. So we have a lot of parts on our airplanes that are test and repair. Well, on a test and repair part, right, you remove it from the airplane, you send it back to depot. The first thing you do, right, put it on a test set and test it. Well, if you've predictively removed it, it hasn't failed yet, and so what's that going to tell you? It's going to tell you it's still good, right? And if it's still good, right, normally it would go back on the shelf to go back out to somebody else. Right? That's not helpful. And you can't operate that way with these parts. And so you have to fundamentally rethink how are you going to be able to, right, update these parts. Some of these parts have multiple internal components. And so the fact that you change one internal component but leave the others that are still aging out, also not helpful. And so until we're able to fundamentally address these types of problems inside of how we sustain our existing weapon systems, we will struggle to be able to get reliability-centered maintenance where we need it to be. Where we need to ultimately go is sensor-based algorithms. Sensor-based algorithms are where we're going on our future weapon systems. We have some weapon systems that we fielded today that have more of this than others. Sensor-based algorithms get out of this predictive analysis to actually being able to look at the part degradation and actually literally tell you that part is going to fail, right? And you all, I'm sure, depending on what cars you drive, but unless you're driving like a 68 Mustang, you probably have sensor-based algorithms in your cars. And to me, a very rough analogy is this is the difference between the maintenance required and the check engine light. Okay, maintenance required, right? I look at that, and it probably means I need an oil change in the next couple thousand miles, right? Noted, right? The check engine light comes on. I may not immediately take it to the dealer, but I'm going to take it someplace that will at least give me a diagnostic to tell me why it came on. Okay, and we've seen that in industry, a huge difference, right, in being able to drive to sensor-based algorithms. And so we're trying to drive this behavior into our new platforms, and it's where we need to go if we're going to really get the benefit out of condition-based maintenance plus. And so this is an area, again, the AI engine is fine. We have to get after this broader, supply supportability aspect and how we're going to think about that and improving the data coming off of airplanes if we're going to get after it. The other program office we have is additive manufacturing. And so the Rapid Sustainment Office is actually the program office for additive manufacturing. And so we actually, at machines above a certain cost price, are actually the approval authority. And so the Rapid Sustainment Office is in the process of essentially trying to develop, and in many ways is already being successful in developing a repair network integration type construct for additive manufacturing. So we actually used this incredibly successful to support Ukraine, some technology for Ukraine, where we were able to go out on some parts, request and distribute CAD files across this entire network to be able to leverage them to generate parts that were necessary, right, to stand up a capability for Ukraine, while the industrial base was able to actually spin up to be able to do that in a different way. And so this is a very positive development. We work very, very closely, again, with the Sustainment Center in this area, right? Thinking our way through with the REACT team, with the ATTCs that are co-located. How do we think through and get after the ability to really take on some of our challenging parts by using additive manufacturing? Cold spray. Cold spray was a technology that really came out of a partnership with Warner Robins that we're now starting to utilize. B1 was an early adopter. We're also looking at, so if you're not familiar with cold spray is basically a technique that allows you to spray metal onto a location. So if you have a location that wears, we're actually looking at it for aircraft battle damage. It actually allows you to spray metal on, and then you can, right, shape it down to whatever shape or size you need. And so great for bolt holes, great for cabling that wears in certain locations. You can actually build up, right, extra metal in those locations that can then wear off without damaging the part. So we're working through how do we implement that technology better. Additive, great partnership not only with the Sustainment Center, but also with our engine community here. Engines are an early adopter, right, of additive parts. We've flown some metal additive parts, right, in partnership with General Electric and our team here. And so making tremendous progress in building out this capability. One of the challenges we have that we're taking on is airworthiness. And so right now, the easy button is plastic parts, right? But there's only so many applications for those kind of parts, or non-critical parts, non-flight critical parts. And again, those applications don't necessarily get after the things that are most important to us. So what we're doing now is, because what would happen is the process was so incredibly lengthy for every individual instantiation, right, to be able to go through and qualify, right, the machine, the powder, the process. Then once you had the part, to get that part approved for that application on that airplane, right, it was incredibly limiting on our ability. So what we've done now is create a process that we refer to as the TAP process, where we're trying to get after how do we speed up that front end by taking classes of materials, classes of machines, and processes, and pre-approving, right, that set of things together, that as long as you're using this type of machine, this type of powder, and you're going to use it in this type of application, right, then we would approve essentially that grouping. And then anybody could come in that has something that falls into those categories and then use it in their own application. And there would be a little bit of residual work that would have to be done to get that piece approved, but it would significantly reduce the front end time. And so we are slowly working through, right, the most common types of materials and machines. I think at this point we've cleared 3 or 4 through that process, and we have another 8 to 12 currently in work as we work our way through. Just trying to drive the lead time down to make this technology more accessible. Because ultimately, as we talked about earlier, again, as General Miller highlighted, and as we think about, right, we're now going to be working in an agile combat employment scenario. We're going to be reacting, right? How do we leverage some of this new technology in a way that perhaps lets us think about this problem differently, right? In being able to perhaps, right, with a relatively small footprint, be able to get to the point that we can actually print parts that otherwise, right, the lead time on might be considerably longer. We've been talking about this for a long time, right? It's still a little bit of a panacea, honestly, but the reality is we're chipping away, in theory of constraints, chipping away at the constraints that will allow us to be more flexible, because we've got to be able to get after how we leverage additive manufacturing more effectively. The other area that we do is tech scouting. And it's looking for technology that, again, is directly aligned to the Rapid Sustainment Office's priorities, which is driving down sustainment cost, right, increasing aircraft availability. And we do this through a process which we refer to as innovate and apply and scale. So the idea is that we look broadly in the innovative space. Really, we're willing to look at almost any technology, but then take it and actually apply it against a relevant Air Force problem set, right, defined for us by the A4, and then develop that capability along one of 2 different pathways to determine best of breed capabilities that we would then go scale at the Air Force level. And the 2 pathways we use, we refer to them as Summit. So the concept of Summit is I take that technology in a specific application at a specific base. I'll put it out there. I'll look to see how it does. If it does well, I will then take it to another base. Maybe I take it to another base with the same weapon system. Maybe I take it to another base with a different weapon system. And I continue to scale it incrementally in different applications until I'm convinced that the applications are broad enough that I could scale it to the Air Force. The other approach we use, we refer to as Lighthouse. So this is based on an industry approach. Industry uses this approach often inside of manufacturing, where they'll take an individual factory, right, and convert it to be a lighthouse where they will test all of their new technologies. And they do this because it's very similar to the same problems we have, that sometimes when you lay in these individual technologies, right, the actual impact of that technology at any one location can be washed out. And it's very, very difficult to tell, did that thing actually make a difference? But when you bundle them all together into a singular location, you can begin to see, do these innovative technologies, when combined, actually have, you know, a multiplying effect, right? 1 + 1 + 1 = 8 in terms of our ability. And so we partnered with the Strike AMU at Nellis, F-15, to create a technology lighthouse, partnered with Google, who created a API technology, which allows us then to distribute this API to anybody who has technology that they would like to test, and then we can bring it in and we can plug it and play it there at the Strike AMU to see how these technologies work together. And what we have found, which was really interesting, is as you look at this, and so that API technology we refer to as LIGHT, it turns out not only are the individual technologies we're looking at scalable, but that LIGHT technology is also scalable. So this concept of a lighthouse in and of itself is something that we are now looking at scaling. And so this is something we're talking to General Hawkins about the potential of standing up, right, a lighthouse at one of our depot locations, where we could do something very, very similar to see, right, can we gain the same, now it may not be the same technologies you're plugging in, but could we generate the same type of benefits, right, on a sustainment center line as we're seeing in an operational line, right? And we're also looking at perhaps other partners now. That's F-15, maybe there's some others. And perhaps this becomes the basis for, right, something that would plug into, right, a flight line of the future kind of concept. because again, these technologies can all be plug and play. So those are our really big focus areas that we're looking in within the Rapid Sustainment Office. And then our last significant partnership, but by far not the smallest, and I'm going to invite General Hawkins to join me on the stage for this one, and I'll keep talking while he walks slowly. You can walk even slower, Stacy. This is going to take a minute. So the last one is in software. And so I'm sure all of you... Stacy's a good friend, so I feel okay with him being at my back. Okay, so the other is in software. So I'm sure all of you saw the announcement about the stand-up of the software directorate. And this is the result of a lot of work. And so I actually went back. This effort that led us to where we are kicked off in March of 21. And in March of 21, I got a call from General Bunch. General Bunch was the AFMC commander at the time. And he gave me a call after he got a call from the chief. And the chief had been, as chiefs do, out visiting lots of different places. And every place he went, somebody wanted to talk to him about their new software factory that they had stood up. And so the chief, while he was excited about the software innovation, had some chief kind of questions like, well, where are all the resources coming from that do this? And, how are we organizing it? And who's making sure that they're not all doing the same thing? And was looking perhaps to understand the structure. And so the call that eventually came to me from General Bunch was, hey, I need you to go look and see if we need some structure. And if we do, what that structure would look like. And so the first thing I did was just have the team print me a map, right? And show me points on that map where all of the different software factories were. And there were a lot of them. And they were growing kind of like tribbles, right? I mean, the dots were, as I had the map, dots were popping on the map. And so you begin this thought process of how do we get our hands and organize this? And so one of the next questions I asked the team was, hey, give me the same map, but on each of these different software factories, I want you to scale the size of the dot based on the size of the organization. And what we immediately found, right, when you do that, is you end up with 3 really big dots, okay? One at Hill, one at Tinker, and one at Robbins, which is our software, right, engineering groups. And by far, even though we were populating all of these software factories, it was pretty clear immediately, and from my own personal experience at Hill, working with the software engineering working group there, it was pretty clear that the central grouping, right, if you were going to build around a singular organization, the one to build around was the software engineering groups. And so to think about then, right, so with that as the foundation, started thinking about, in partnership, well, first with General Kirkland, right, and then with General Miller, now with General Hawkins. I'm getting pretty old. I'm on my 3rd Sustainment Center commander already. How do we organize this? And so we created a partnership between our 2 organizations, because the majority of these, at least within AFMC, these all really reside within the Sustainment Center or within Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. You begin, once you get outside of AFMC, to get into some others, right? But the initial problem was, if we can organize this within inside of Air Force Materiel Command, perhaps it becomes a basis for thinking about how we might organize this more broadly. And the idea was not to diminish innovation, right, but to perhaps put a little bit of structure and thought around that. And so I generally refer to it as scaffolding, not drywall, right, in terms of how we think about this. And so we created a series of working groups. And so just as I talked about before, right, with the operational imperatives, that we saw cross-cutting themes in each one, and we created a group out of that. We saw cross-cutting themes in each of these software factories. All of them were off trying to solve talent management. All of them were off looking at tools. All of them were off looking at a various different, a common set of things. And so out of that, we created a common set of working groups that have somebody from both organizations chairing, for us to start thinking about how, as an Air Force team, do we get after some of these same issues. But in the end, we still needed, right, a grounding structure in the middle of all that as an anchor. And so that was the discussion that General Hawkins and I had that Stacy, I will turn over to you.
Thank you so much, General Morris. So if you don't realize the genius that is General Morris, no slides teaching us about all aspects of his business as we should be taught for those of us who don't have a big brain. Just very, very impressive. And thank you, General Morris, for allowing me to share the stage with you. General Miller, this will be the opportunity I have to thank you publicly for being here. So Tom Miller and I go back. We had dinner last night. I think we counted back to 25 years. I used to be General Morris's neighbor, and I'll let him assess whether I was a good one or not. But it's really cool partnering with these two gentlemen, these two airmen, as we talk about what the wave of the future will be. So I want to kind of characterize the dynamic of the relationship I have with General Morris. It may look as though we wear the same rank. We're both center commanders. General Morris is a joint airman, a commander, a two-time center commander. But we have to go back to our origin story. And if anyone here is familiar with the Air Force Academy, General Morris's origin story starts in 1988. My origin story starts in 1991. So if that means anything to you, think firstie and 4th degree. So about my second or third week as a sustainment center commander, General Morris had started with General Miller a monthly call where the two center commanders and we just talk and try to compare notes, try to find ways that we can partner better together. And his first call, I tried to prepare for it because I'm going to face General Morris. And basically it was really simple. It was, Stacy, get the software organization across the finish line. And that wasn't 3-star to 3-star. That was senior at the Air Force Academy talking to a freshman at the Air Force Academy. So, General Morris, thank you for your leadership, carrying that water for, like you mentioned before, years before this year, bringing the team together to actually make it a reality. This is a big deal. And I just want to thank General Richardson as well for challenging the entire Air Force Materiel Command for working as an inter-organization, inter-center, and for actually developing enterprise solutions. And this software directorate, as we're going to call it, is going to be something that we think will be the force for change that will allow us to be able to accelerate like the Chief of Staff has actually challenged us to do. This software is actually going to bring together and consolidate 3 disparate groups, as General Morris mentioned, currently located at Robbins Hill and Tinker. These groups were called software maintenance groups for many, many years. This is a 40-year mission that the Air Force has been involved in. We changed the name to software engineering groups, so thereby you will hear them referred to as SWEGs. This software directorate brings those organizations together. No job loss, no movement of any person to any particular location. Everybody stays where they are. But we've created a flat and distributed organization that will be agile. And as General Morris mentioned, it's important to understand this organization will be innovative. It will prioritize innovation, and it will also increase collaboration, not just within it, but externally as well. It creates a single storefront for us to work within the Air Force as far as channeling requirements through, but it also creates a storefront for our industry partners to enter to leverage the capabilities and capacity that will be in this 5,000-person organization. General Morris mentioned common tools, common practices, standardization, bringing in a way of doing business to where we can harness the power of this organization because everybody is accustomed to operating in the same way for the potential to innovate and scale that innovation greater. And I truly believe this organization will allow us to be more cost effective. I believe in combination with industry, we will be able to build high-performing public-private partnerships. I think Dr. Webb is no longer in the room, but I am really looking forward to seeing what this organization does to partner with academia, trade schools, tech colleges. We will look for software engineers, but we will also look for coders to actually populate this organization so that we can harness the power that will come as a result of it being stood up. My sincere thanks to a lot of people who have done this work. I want to start off with the leadership team. The Secretary of the Air Force mentioned when he gave Brigadier General Luke Cropsey a job of actually integrating across the JADC2 space. He said it was the hardest job that he had ever given to anyone. I want to recognize Mr. Wayne Ayer, who serves as our Director of Engineering, our AFSCEN, but also dual-hatted as the inaugural Software Directorate Director. these are the hardest two jobs that anyone in the Sustainment Center have ever been given. So I'd like to thank Wayne there. Could you stand up, Wayne, and just have everybody recognize you? Wayne is a native of Georgia, coming to us from Warner Robins, Georgia, and I appreciate you taking this challenge on. I would say the person, and I was here at Tinker 10 years ago, and I was talking to this next individual back then about the potential of a single software organization. The senior technical leader of the Air Force Sustainment Center Software Enterprise, and will be the senior technical leader, but also the person who has been on the Moses Wilderness journey for not just the past 10 years, but I would say upwards of 20 to 25 years. Mr. Mike Jennings, would you please stand up, please, sir? Thank you so much for your perseverance. And to really, what's emblematic of this partnership is a partnership that we sustain with the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. And as the military director, Colonel Trana James, I'm not sure if TJ made it, but Colonel Trana James will be our military deputy, working as part of this team that will lead this organization for the next months and years as we scale this to work more effectively in this ecosystem called the Defense Industrial Base. We have many people in the audience who had their hands in this, and every single person who, on a hope and a prayer that this would come to fruition, diligently worked everything from legislative engagements, working within the working groups, working horizontally and vertically across the Air Force, working with those software factories that General Morris talked about. So if you are involved in this software directorate family, could you please stand? And I know you're in the audience, there are too many of you to name, but please stand and let us see who you are. Let's give them a round of applause. This is truly exciting work, and it's only just the beginning. It's only just the beginning of inter-center collaboration across the Air Force Materiel Command. It's only just the beginning of you seeing enterprise solutions coming from Air Force Materiel Command. Again, General Morris, thank you for your leadership, thank you for your partnership, and thank you for your Air Force Academy firstie direction. I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much, and thank you for allowing me to speak today.
I don't know if anybody else is going to say it, but I think we're at lunch. Okay, thanks.
At this time, we want to thank the University of Oklahoma Gene Rainbolt College of Business for sponsoring today's lunch, which is available in the dining room next to this room in Ballroom C. Lunch is included in the cost of registration for paid attendees, sponsors, and exhibitors. Additional seating is available on the event plaza outside to the east on the second floor, and we will reconvene at 1:25 p.m., 13:25 hours. Thank you.
Behind every takeoff, every overstuffed suitcase,